Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My mic's way over here. And welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. I'm Alexi, and this is Adam. And we are an online resource and community for up-and-coming screenwriters. And today, we're talking about a series that I love, Undone, which is super cool. Fun fact about it, it is the first non-short that is fully rotoscope animation.
That's a series.
Yeah, that's a series.
There have been movies that have been done, obviously.
Yeah, like not a limit. Yeah. So, yeah, Adam, you hadn't seen it. What did you think?
Oh, so I just watched it earlier today. The first 2 episodes because I was supposed to watch the first 2 and Alexi watched the whole season. I'm gonna watch the whole thing this weekend because the end, it's so well done. Yes, those are the 2 movies I was referring to, Theo. They're not as good as the show, though. But it all comes down to the writing. I thought the relationships were so authentically and subtly stated while planting plot information without you realizing it. You think oh yeah, it's just her and her sister getting along. But the second episode, the way it sort of reinverts what we've been told already about who these people are, and really, I want Alexi to do her spiel, but I was really impressed with the seriousness of everything. And what I mean by the seriousness is every scene was necessary and intentional.
Yeah.
And a lot of shows like this, or not shows like this, I mean shows that are family dramas that have oh, look at these relatable people who speak people do now, they focus on, I think, dialogue over story. And this show everything is imbued with meaning and story on a very high level. So I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of it.
I'm glad. I was stoked. I'm sure that people have been there's no way people have not been talking about this for a while, and it actually came out a little bit ago.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, and I just completely missed it. And then I was bored and browsing, and I was like, that looks like fun, and watched it, and I was like, geez.
Second season is renewed. It was renewed for a second season, yeah.
I'm curious what they're going to do with all that.
Yeah. So we are going to have this conversation with the assumption that people have watched the first few episodes but haven't finished it. Let's try not to spoil the end.
Okay, fair enough.
The very end, payoff, that sort of thing, reveals.
Yeah. And the reason why I really wanted us to at least watch 2 episodes, though, is because first off, they're only 20 minutes, which is quite short and amazing what they're able to accomplish. But then also because the first one is the most grounded in reality episode. And by episode 2, you really get to see how they're going to play with time and space and reality and all these different things.
Yeah.
So a fun fact about this, and another reason why I think it's good to think about these, is that the whole thing was shot in a black box theater, like a little black box theater with super, super basic props. So it didn't even take any time between. And then everything was added on top. So they weren't shooting on location for anything. It was all there. So super low budget. And then, yeah, so it's, as far as animation goes, it's probably one of the most accessible options, I'd say.
Well, in theory.
In theory.
So I don't want to go in too much of a tangent, but there's it's because the technology, this isn't what they used for the show, but there is AI assisted rotoscope out there. I sent you some of those videos. Joel Haber, that YouTuber, he does little comedy videos that use the same technology, but he'll only draw 3 or 4 frames per shot, and the AI will complete the shot.
Wow.
By match, because you shoot it live action, same principle. You shoot it live action, but instead, but the thing is, it doesn't look as clean or good as this. It's weird. it's 70% there. But there might be a point in like 10 years where you can have rotoscope animation you shot in your backyard and you can do in a matter of months rather than years.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that this is accessible, like what they did.
Well, it's low budget, and that's what I mean.
Relatively low budget, for sure. But like, still, the amount of time it takes to do what they did at the level they did is like there's a reason why they didn't pump out a second season even 3 years after it came out. Like,
yeah, it's definitely a lot of work, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that, like, as far as animation that looks this good and accomplishes everything this accomplishes, it was really like intelligently done and handled in a really interesting way.
Well, in terms of like getting performance right, like it makes so much sense if they did it in a small, intimate theater, because you could sense that the director has got to really work with the actors on like crafting performances and subtleties of expression and like little like relationship mapping and all of that like really nuanced great work that goes into theater but sometimes is lost in the pressures of a film set. Like the acting in this was so good. It was unusually good for what this type of thing is. And I think one of the reasons is just the pressure. Sometimes you're like, okay, we got 5 takes, we got to get out. Rather than if you're in a theater and it's like in a place where it doesn't really matter what, there's no lighting other than maybe like basic exposure.
Yeah.
Like it changes what you put importance on, what you put time on.
And the lead, Rosa Salazar, who I'm now a super fan of, she was freaking amazing. Phenomenal. She was saying how much she liked doing it this way instead because you don't have to waste your energy in between takes. Oh, welcome, Andilla. You didn't miss it yet. We like it. We're just starting. Yeah, but so I guess to give a little bit of explanation for what this series is and talking about like breaking it down. We don't want to talk about the whole season, so I'm just going to do kind of a loose thing. But for that opening shot of the entire series, we do what we talk about a lot, which is a teaser, like a little flash forward where we get a sense that this is not going to be a straight drama, right? Like in that first scene, you have her driving the car, she's having a mental breakdown, and then we can tell that she sees something that distracts her, and then car wreck. And then we cut back to her having, I think it's right when we cut back to her and her sister in the bar talking about her sister's engagement. And this is something we talk about a lot, and we're especially talking about in our pilot development class, which is that you have an opportunity for that opening moment to show the promise of what's happening, especially if we're going to spend some time grounded in a different kind of world than we're going to be in later. So like, I mean, we've talked about this before, but Game of Thrones did that I looked it up and I am right. Game of Thrones did it before by opening with the people running from the White Walkers, and then cut to a more like less magical scene, right? So you get the opportunity to promise something and then bring us back into the story. And that's what they do here. And then all the information is just really, really cleverly laid in. This, we learned that her mom is from Mexico in that first conversation, which is extremely relevant. Isn't just like a random piece of details. We meet this bartender who matters a lot. We meet her sister, who's a main character. We see her talking with her kind of fiance, boyfriend, very serious partner about what she wants from life and all these things. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's a great point. There was many, many great frames and they just flashed by. But yeah, this whole first episode was really building up to the car wreck that we had promised in the very beginning. And I would say that did you think that she had a tangible objective in this pilot episode?
No, not really.
Yeah.
But the way they get away with it is, it's only 23 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
And so much is introduced that she is negatively, so much is happening to her that she wants to get out of. Like she doesn't want to deal with, planning her I guess her objective, if it exists, is to sort of convince her sister not to go through the wedding.
That's true. Yeah.
So I would actually say that is the objective.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that you're right. Yeah. And their dynamic is so good. This whole thing was really well cast. But yeah, then we end the episode with the car wreck, and then when we start the next episode, she is still in the car wreck, and we see how this has affected her mentally. And she sees, the vision of her dad, and starts to have all these strange things happen to her. And she's wondering, is this real? Is this the thing in my family where people say that they go crazy? Or what's exactly going on? And all right, so to move into the conversation, a really good choice I wanted to bring up was, every single time we talk about Breaking Bad, John says they could have never made him a history teacher.
Yep.
Our main character in this, I was going to call her Rosa because that's the actress's name, but our main character in this could not have been anyone else. She's someone who has a connection to these indigenous cultures, not only by heritage, but also in her interests. Like from the very first moment, we know that this is something she's passionate about and that she cares about. Alma does. And that comes to play majorly as the series develops. Adam, is there anything you found?
I'd add that, my big observation is sort of like, okay, when you watch pilots, there's this, especially of this nature where it's serialized and, it's the pilot has to set up what the main objective is and what the stakes are, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of time spent, establishing, okay, who the protagonist is, what their problems are, what's their normal world, what's their status quo, what makes up, like, what are the set of problems in their life and how do they feel about those problems? What's their unmet desire? All of these sort of questions are things you really need to put in the pilot. But also, to make it interesting, you need to end the pilot with the new world, the promise of what the show is going to be, usually. And this pilot, because it's 23 minutes, the hour-long version of this would have probably had the car crash happen 2/3 through.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have ended it. So, because this is a 30-minute or 23-minute thing, we only get a little glimpse of the new world before throwing people into the deep end in episode 2. The glimpse of the new world is she sees the photograph of her father in life come to life while she's driving, and we realize that that's the thing that distracted her. He like comes out of the ether, like there's little black bubbles, he pops out of time and space. That is a taste of sort of what's to come, but it's really not fundamentally the promise of the show. Like episode 2 is where we really get into the crazy space-time, potentially schizophrenia stuff.
Yeah. Oh, where did we froze? Oh man. Well,
I'm fine.
I heard you the whole time. I know what you're saying, Adam. I'm about to sneeze. But I want to know what you all thought about this. And Dill was saying, I know I could not write this show, not as I am now. Good to know I have a lot of progress to make. The show just feels impossible to me. The whole season slaps. Yes, it does. It's really and it's, and the writer of this spent a lot of time, I think, growing up in Mexico and was very involved in like the shamanistic culture, beliefs and all that. So that came from her own understanding. And I think that
Kate Purdy or Raphael?
I think it was actually Kate
Matthew Bob Luxburg
Purdy, because she also did like BoJack Horseman.
I wonder if they had a writer's room or they split it together.
I don't know. I think it was her.
Okay, I think it was her. So they co-wrote the first 4 episodes. Mm-hmm. She wrote episode 5 by herself, and they had 3 other writers do episodes 6, 7, and 8, which is interesting.
But so she, yeah, it is Kate Purdy, because she had this experience where at some point she became concerned that she had schizophrenia because her grandmother and 2 granduncles have schizophrenia. And she ended up trying a bunch of like indigenous and like Ayurveda, I think that's how you say it, Ayurvedic medicine to try to treat.
That's from India.
Yeah, but she also spent time in Mexico with like more like shamanistic type healing, and so she really pulled all of this in to a story in this interesting way. And yeah, I think you can tell that this is someone's like, that this is very, very specific. This is a very specific world that we're diving into, and that it's not something that someone took like lightly. You know, it's incredibly thoughtful.
She was a writer on Cougar Town.
Cougar. But yeah, I want to know what you all think, though. What did you all get from this?
But there, you know, even if people don't comment, you know,
yeah,
I think there's just so much to say about sort of I think the non-linear meaning, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like the audience not spelling out a change in time, but letting the audience put it together. Like, for example, the first time in the hospital episode where we see Sam, who's in scrubs, our scrubs, walking out of the room, and she says, "Thank you, sir," right? She calls him sir as he leaves. And then, forgot his name, the daycare guy, David Diggs, his character.
Yeah.
Her boss walks past him. And in the conversation, when he's sitting there and he you know, shows her a drawing the kids made, and she says, "Isn't it weird that you came before my boyfriend came?" He says, I just saw him on the way out. And then later on, we see the conversation that she has with Sam, but he's not wearing OR gloves. He's wearing his normal, like, something he would wear. And at the end of the conversation, we see her consciousness change, and we see an expression on her face change, and she calls him sir, as if like while he walks away, she like loses the thread. And it's this point of view change, really. I mean, it's not a point of view change, but like it's a perspective on what we have just seen, and us putting pieces together. Like, for example, the whole idea of that episode also at the end is punctuated by the fact that she's awake, which means that all of that was just a fever dream in her head, or I mean, it was real in one sense, but like none of those conversations necessarily happened. You can correct me if that's not the case. You
should keep watching, because everything is like very ambiguous, which is what I like.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the fact that they ended that episode with she's awake isn't insubstantial, and it does put in question that what we've just seen, the order of which we've just seen. I'm sure there's more of that type of stuff before, but my point is, really making a roundabout way, is seeing different moments from multiple perspectives. One perspective being, I saw the first half of this conversation, but now I see the second half as explained by somebody else. That is powerful, and you have to trust your audience and your reader to make those I mean, it's something that's hard to communicate on the page, really, but it communicates really powerfully. Like the joy of the audience member being, "Oh my God, she's had this conversation before.
Yeah.
This is what she was talking about. This is the moment we were talking about." Like, that joy is extremely powerful. I'm calling it joy because it's very rare.
Yeah. You know, and one of the really subtle moments that I think helped us to kind of ease into this idea, that I saw the whole season before and then did a rewatch of the first 2. And in episode 2, I think it was episode 2, one of the moments I really liked was when she's just sitting there in bed talking to her sister, and the dad is sitting in the chair next to her, and he just randomly says, "Partly." And she's like, "Partly what?" And then not even like too far later, Alma turns and looks, and the window is turned into like a train, and like the whole the scene is going by as if she's on a moving train, and she asks, "Am I going crazy?" And the dad says, "Partly." So that's the first time that we really start seeing like, oh, okay, this is gonna start overlapping and playing with things in like a really interesting way. And I just thought that was so smart.
It was. And I also want to add my favorite aspect of the episode was the final conversation with her mother and her sister. When she was sort of back to base. She had chosen to stay in the boat, like her dad suggested her. Like you have to keep one foot in your body. That conversation showed that she was relying on her insight. Those fever dreams, all of that conversation is planted with lines she would have never said if she had not lived them. It's the first time she goes to the conversation with her sister in the cactus garden. She basically comes blaring at her saying, you don't care about me, you just want me to be a prop at your wedding, basically. And with her mom, she said, it's like, she comes blazing at her, and uses the insight of those fights to, when she gets a redo, to be political and to tell them, I love you. I also love the idea of, the parallel of her sister's relationship with her father's relationship, when her sister tells her, I want you to be there. I want you to be there when I have kids. I want you to be there at my wedding. I want you to be there. I always want you to be there. And the sort of, when we sort of see that the empty chair at her graduation and her dad's leaving or dying, not being able to meet her up with her at trick or treat, all of those things, it's a really, like, those two conversations play off of each other. And like, that's a confident writer who's like, they don't spell out for you that, this is connected. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it's still, I don't know, I feel like a lesser writer would have been a little more obvious. Also, the fact that in episode 1, she's arguing with Sam about her matching trick-or-treat outfits.
Yeah.
When that is, obviously she has some sort of trauma about that was the night her dad died, was Halloween, and that he left her alone.
I didn't even catch that, but yeah.
Outfit. That's meaningful. Like, that's not a coincidence. It's the same thing of her working at a daycare when the last thing she wants is to have kids.
Yeah. You see all of her different, I think it's also part of like hints to her inner need and like what she actually wants, but what she's not willing to accept. And I felt like that speech with her sister was a really good, version or expression of her flaw and like her flawed belief system. It was in the first episode, I think, where the sister came to church and then left. I think that was episode 1. And then Alma follows her outside and they have that fight. And then Alma is basically saying, like, yeah, I don't want you to marry him because we're broken and we break people and we're broken. And I feel like that is her belief about the world.
Yeah.
That has to change. That's like her flaw. So the thematic question would be something about like, can you be a broken person and like have relationships in your life? Or like, what does it mean to be a broken person? Something in there that will come to fruition later. But you can already see though that the sister holds a very different view, because she's planning to have a family, get married, have kids, do all these things that Alma's scared to do. And the mom and the dad clearly hold different views too. The dad's already explaining like, no, this doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that you're special.
Also, that conversation with her dad, it's the classic, you take the blue pill or you take the red pill. Like, it is that scene, done a lot more, in its own fresh way. But it's sort of like, you can live this life. And it's kind of actually reminds me of that a little better, but like the End of the Green Knight, where we see his entire life play before his eyes, and we sort of see the impact of that. She sees what her entire life would be like if she had a kid with Sam, if she grew old and died and watched her mother die, if she watched her sister die, she would be the one to stay over. She saw her entire life. And then her dad says, or you could do something different. Take the red pill. And, we get to see her dancing with her family outside of time and space and flowers blooming and crazy stuff, being outside of life and death. And also, it's just such good visual storytelling, confident visual storytelling. You see that cycle repeated when she looks at her mother in the chair and sees her mother decompose, and out of the skull comes a baby. and then she decomposes again. And out of the skull comes a baby. Just sort of like, oh yeah, that's just you can just sort of be part of the cycle, live life, do what everybody else does. Her mother's that when she looks at her mother, that's all she sees.
Mm-hmm.
Death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was actually. Let's see if I can still grab it. That was actually a clip I wanted to play here. Was
experiment that?
Well, I'm trying to see what happens here. But here we go. I'm going to see if I can play it, but basically I realized that it's a 6-minute clip from episode 2, and by 6 minutes you've seen like a third of the episode. So I was trying to decide if it was worth it or not. But if it lets me, I might try to play it in a moment, but my computer needs a second to figure it out because we've never done this before. But I think it'd be fun to start sharing some clips in here.
I hope I hope that they never give us a definitive answer over whether or not it's real. I hope they end with being like, yeah, but she just could be schizophrenic. I hope they give us that answer because I hate that we get so much certainty all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that you can safely put your trust in these writers' hands.
I'm definitely sure. I mean, I'm definitely going to enjoy the rest of it because there's no way they set this up and they're going to like totally fuck things up.
No, you could already tell it's way too thoughtful to have been like, yeah. Also, though, what I love is that this is like what you were saying before. This is a really serious topic, and someone could have done this without that humor and like levity on top, and had it be, yeah, it would have been a drag, honestly. But like they casted someone who could really play like a very charming character, and added this layer on top that lets everything else underneath kind of get the focus it deserves, because we're not like caught up in all this like heavy stuff on top too. You know what I'm saying?
Just I think as a axiom of life, life is funny and tragic and fucked up. Like people are funny. Human beings are funny. In fact, if you're willing to take enough of an outside perspective on some of the most tragic things to ever happen to people, there are funny things about it. Like if you retract your humanity and your empathy from like there's always like life is kind of weird and messed up. It's never all like sunshine and happiness, and it's never all darkness. And even if it is all darkness, there are things that are objectively kind of funny about tragicness. Like not to get political, but like if you think of all the people to become an autocratic, cult of personality president, Donald Trump it's funny that happened. Like if you don't care, if you don't look at the impact, and you're like, it's like life is funny and messed up.
Well, I mean, it was in a whatever, like what show?
The Simpsons.
Yeah,
they made a joke about it. Like,
yeah,
and I think that a show about mental illness, a show about there's shows about cancer that are funny. There's shows about like I don't want to say like making fun of. Because there's a difference between that and what I'm talking about. Like this show has humor in like mixed with genuine empathy and pathos, and I feel like the best drama has like Breaking Bad is a funny show. Like there's a lot of funny things happening in that show, except for maybe the last episode. But I'm rambling, but I just basically think that people should embrace that type of thing. Self-seriousness is the most depressing thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, and also, yeah, that's a really great point, Indilla. I'm gonna hold this up.
I wanted to watch that show.
You should hear paramedics joking around. It's so ghoulish and ghastly from the outside, but it actually makes sense. They need to cope. Also, they're human. Yeah, I mean, I've been like one of my close friends is currently in the Army, and he has he can sometimes joke about things where you're like, holy crap, and I think it's like then one time he explained, like, sometimes I go over the top because it's like a way of coping, and I'm used to doing it with other soldiers because this is what we all do. And I think that that's a very good point. But yeah, absolutely.
You gonna play this clip?
I'm trying to see if it's going to do it for me. Let's see. All right. It might not have audio, so if it doesn't, Adam, maybe we could talk over it like a maybe true.
If it doesn't have audio, I don't bother.
Here we go.
All right.
So I ran into your doctor. She said you can start physical therapy tomorrow. Everything's going to be okay. How awesome is that?
So we do have to do this again.
Do what?
You mentioned we had a fight earlier. What was it about?
You don't remember?
I mean, I remember I was right.
Okay, well, you weren't, so it doesn't matter. We can forget it. We can just think of this as a new start.
Easy for me.
I'm so glad you're getting better. I wouldn't want my maid of honor to be in a back brace. I mean, what would that look like?
I don't know. Maybe like I survived a car crash and I'm lucky to be alive.
Okay, don't do that. You know I was kidding.
No, you weren't kidding. I almost died, and all you're worried about is I'm pulling focus away from your perfect, pretty princess engagement. If for once, people are paying attention to me, and it's killing you.
For once? Alma, you are the one that everyone always pays attention to. I aced the SATs, and you drop out of college. I went into swim meet, and no one cares because you cut yourself.
So much for a new start.
I turned 21, and you get busted for buying pot.
I was buying pot
And don't
for
even get me
you.
started on all your hearing stuff. All your special doctors and your special classes.
I wanted that?
I just wanted 1 year that was about me, and you ruined that.
I was in a fucking coma! Press the button. I tried that already. It didn't work. Press it again. No, can't you see? We're caught in a weird loop and I'm trying to get us out of it, but I need to focus.
Gotcha. Yes, gotcha. I know this is overwhelming. It's all new to you. Remember when you got your implant and you could hear for the first time, but your brain couldn't process it? You couldn't make sense of it?
And it all sounded like bells and ducks and robots.
Right, well, this is kind of like that. You can communicate with me because the car accident, it kind of lifted a curtain. And I need you to be able to communicate with me. But now we have to develop your potential. You know, this is kind of a new way of hearing.
Am I losing my mind like Geraldine?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean, your grandmother, she didn't lose her mind. She just lost her way back to reality. You know, the reality that you know, or that you knew, that you still know, and that you will continue to know if we do this right.
What are you talking about?
Some people's minds are more capable. They can see more, they can feel more, they can know more, right? And your grandmother was one of those people, and you are too.
One of those people? You mean?
In indigenous cultures, people who could see visions and that hear voices, they're the shamans, you know, they're the wise ones.
Yeah, sure.
But in Western culture, those people are locked up or they're put out on the street.
So
we need to carefully develop your potential.
Or I'll be put out on the street? I don't know, Dad.
Okay. Again.
What were you doing not wearing a seatbelt? Not thinking about me or your sister, I can tell you that. This is the worst time. Where are you going? I'll get you juice.
Okay, come on. Okay, none of this is real. I'm the only one who's real. I just need to focus. Come on, just focus and wake up. Press the button. I tried that already. It didn't work. Press it again. No, can't you see? We're caught in a weird loop and I'm trying to get us out of it, but I need to focus.
Alma, wait.
Did you know that the word chocolate comes from our friends, the Aztecs?
Did not know that, Beth, but this one here is a real beaut. fine form. What the fuck was that?
Well, I don't know, but if she was made of cake, we got ourselves a winner.
Do you like it fast?
Hello.
Oh,
So I wanted to cut it there.
Let's just run the rest of the episode, you know?
I know. The thing is that like it's not really like it's like a 6-minute scene/sequence type thing, you know? It's like so it's hard to figure out where to cut it, but I think that's from episode 2, and that's really when we start seeing the full scope of what rotoscope can accomplish for this, like the way that we can play with time and space.
Remember that it was all shot in a black box theater.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that really says everything. You know, the amount of work that went into this on the animator side. So that just shows.
Sorry.
You know, it might be an interesting exercise for somebody who has too much time on their hands, or they just really want to understand how the level of connections that are made in this episode, is to just rewatch this episode and make a list of every single duality and connection. Like whether it's when she was standing in the elevator the first time watching herself, and then again when is herself and we see the earlier version of herself watching herself, or whether we see like the multiple versions of the conversation. Make a list of every connection in that episode. I bet you would be surprised by how many there are, how dense it is, and how it all fits into 23 minutes. And that's the type of stuff you just cannot get without really hard work and like really detailed story consideration, or multiple drafts, or all of the above. You know, it's kind of just like that having good ideas thing that's really annoying. Like how do you write like a great piece of work? Well, at the end of the day, you follow story conventions, you understand, you make good choices. At the end of the day, you kind of just have to make, you have to like make good connections.
Yeah.
I think that's a more useful thing to say than have good ideas, because ideas aren't really what's valuable. It's the connections between ideas, right? The application and the execution of ideas. Some of the best stories ever like could be expressed in like really reductive terms.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what makes them special. The ideas, the summary is not what makes it special. It's the connections between ideas in execution.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a useful thing to say, but
it is. And I mean, this one isn't simple, but it's another example of I have a really hard time telling people why they should watch this, besides just pulling like it's great card. Because like when you start when I start trying to explain the nuances of what's going on, it's like, you know, it's the log line is really something about like when a 28-year-old woman nearly dies in a car crash, it triggers hallucinations that could be spiritual or schizophrenia, and she has to save her dead dad's life, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I'd be like that wouldn't sell me.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a hard one to
is?
do on idea.
You know how I would sell this to somebody?
Sell it, Adam.
I would say it's a lot like Rick and Morty in how dense it is. It's like the connections and density it's like that. That's how I would recommend it to somebody. Like, but a serious, beautifully rendered, evocative, earnest, like drama. Totally different subject matter. Totally, but like it has like the consideration of ideas that show has. Like within 23 minutes, like this hospital episode felt like the best episodes of Rick and Morty. They're like, how much did they put into 23 minutes? How many connections did they make? How many callbacks did they make? Wow, and it all is internally cohesive and of a piece. Holy shit! Except the difference is the acting on this. It's just like that. That's. And I would also talk about how amazing the performance is. I talk about how it was made. Like it was black box theater, and it was all rotoscope animation, and that it perfectly is connected to the idea of like, you know, subjectivity of self, how the human mind expresses itself when it's untethered by place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's hard. I basically say I have a huge crush on Rosa Salazar, and that it plays with time and space in a really cool way and gets at really deep subject matter while being like really funny and relatable on the surface. And that's my like actual best pitch if I'm not trying to do a logline version, but
Yeah,
it is hard.
You can't sell the show with a logline. You need to sell this show with a proof of concept.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what they did.
You have to. I'd be curious to learn more about that.
I also think this is just a total set. I just think it's so funny that Bob Odenkirk is now like this serious like actor. Because for years I remember him as being on Mr. Show with David Cross doing really dumb sketch comedy. Like just like really lowbrow comedy. Now he's like this prestige Emmy-winning actor who like you plug in to be somebody's dad who's dead. You know, I just think that's so fun.
They had so many like random people that were just like pretty big players.
Yeah, I'm happy that Daveed Diggs is getting all this amazing work. He is such a good actor. He is so much. Even if he has a small part in something, like he's so grounding. Like I never have a problem believing he's a real person.
Right.
And that's a really unique. I hope he gets like a vehicle, something that's like a great show. That's just him.
He absolutely should.
He had there was a really good movie. I don't want to get into a tangent, but
yeah, it was funny to see him in that role. And then also the bartender was somebody else that I recognized, and I was like, wait, is that person who I can't place right now? But I know he was in a show that I watched a lot. I have no idea what show it was.
Gonzalez, apparently.
Yeah, I can't remember which show he was in that I watched.
Doctor.
Nope.
And Resurrection Boulevard.
Nope. It's probably the cheesiest one he's done.
On Wikipedia, he said those are his best known roles. So I'm not going to go deeper than that.
I knew him from something else. Probably some CW cheesy shiz. But he's great too. Like this whole thing was just well done. And I'm curious how much time it actually took to shoot. That's something else I'd like to know. I did find an article that I'm going to share in the Discord later. That is a bunch of different people in the like animation department talking about how they handled this. And I think it'd be really interesting for our animation loving folks to learn a little bit more about it. Like they get into the really like some real specifics about like basically each scene had like 8 painted backgrounds, and they shot everything from those angles and like the way, like basically that level of detail about the animation. And I shall share that later.
98% on Rotten Tomato. Not that really means anything, but
man,
that's pretty high.
It is.
The people who saw this liked it, and I'm glad, and I hope more people watch it. I mean, it got greenlit, so enough people greenlit for second season, so enough people watched it. But
I'm so curious how they're going to handle season 2.
They're going to go deeper with the backstory, probably.
You think so?
The thing I hope they don't do is that she meets somebody else like herself.
Yeah.
I hope they don't go outward too much. Is so much of the strength of this idea is it's constrained. It's claustrophobic, like nature, like the subjectivity of like family and memory. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And it was like really based around this one particular moment of the dad's death, right? So it's like if all these different things are in orbit, all these different story things, like playing with time, all this stuff, it's not about going back to all of her life or like playing with all of her life. It's about this one moment. And I think that scale helps a lot. And like there's still flexibility. Like again, like you still have like other stuff, but it's all orbiting around this one dramatic moment, which is the idea that her dad died.
They might do a time skip.
That
might be interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, 5 years later. Mm-hmm. And now something else is going on in her life,
I think that's probably a good takeaway too, if I'm thinking about like what I can take from this. And it's that, they're doing all this like really complicated world building, rule building stuff that's really abstract and like takes us all over the place, and you don't, it's like suddenly the background shatters and then she's flying through space. Like there's all these things that are changing, but it's all about this really, really specific world. Like it's about a woman and her sister and her mom and her boyfriend, and it's about her dad died in this one particular moment and trying to figure out all of that. Like it's this very, very specific thing. And I think it would be easy to try to open, like if you had this idea that this girl goes into a coma and then suddenly has this awakening, the spiritual awakening, or like a mental health crisis. If you just had that idea from nowhere, it would be really easy to think huge about it. Like, what are all the ways that this impacts things? And I think the writers did a very smart thing by saying, let's make it about this one event. Yeah, Theo, if you can get if you have the script supervisor, you should hook us up with that script, though. I tried looking for it and could not find it. And since it's been a while, I have a feeling that they don't plan to release it, if that is the case. You could hook us up. But yeah, I mean, just like thinking about, I think it's helpful to try to like when we're talking about these things, to think about what like how they got to here, because it seems like an obvious choice by the time you actually get to the series to make it about the dad being dead, but you could have done anything. The person advising her could have been anyone, you know, and she could have been any person. There's all these really smart choices that feel like natural, that are easy to take for granted, but it's important to notice them as writers so we can make similarly smart choices. If they want to come on Coffee Class, we will always have them. If Rosa Salazar is listening that wants to come on Coffee Class, we will always have you, Rosa. But yeah, that would be awesome. So,
well, do you have anything else to say about this topic, about the show?
I mean,
without spoiling anything. That's
the hard part. That's the hard part.
Because I know that a lot of us haven't finished the show, and like, okay, would you say she had a full character arc in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was designed to be standalone.
I got the feeling it was designed to be standalone.
Gotcha. Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, that was so good. Let's do another one."
Like it felt to me like it might have been like a Fleabag situation. Gotcha. It was like, "Oh, this is real good. Like, what else can we do from here?" Since it was so successful. And anybody else like Indilla who's seen the whole thing, do you agree that it felt like it felt like it was originally intended as a standalone thing?
Feel free to disagree with Alexi.
Yeah, disagree with me. And are you agreeing very, very passionately, or is Indilla saying yes to having them on Coffee Class? Because I don't want to get my hopes up.
No. Just take the wins. Take the wins that you can get.
Fair enough.
I love twisting other people's words for my own benefit. So that's
my favorite.
You should do for yourself as well.
You know what's one of my favorite things to do ever that you've definitely heard me do, and I'm fully aware it's childish and annoying, but I like being on the phone with someone, and then like you say, like, tell Carl I say hi, and then I say, Adam says you suck, and then Carl says, hi Adam, and then I say, Carl says you suck too. And
so that makes so much sense, because whenever I'm on the phone with Carl and you're in the background and I tell him to tell Alexi something, he always has like this reaction. And he always earnestly exactly says what I tell him to tell you. So that's very interesting.
It's my favorite hobby. It's childish, and I love it every time. It's fun to be annoying sometimes. So Andela does agree with me, but it's not quite as passionate as I thought.
Yeah,
so
there's a difference between yes and 12 exclamation points versus for sure with a period.
Mm-hmm. Definite character arc that felt like it was meant for one season. I'm interested to see how they do a season 2. Agree entirely. I think they've already said, I'm pretty sure they've already said Rosa Salazar's back, so it's not just like opening it up.
No, what I meant by having another person with powers, I meant
Oh,
like,
no, I know.
Meet somebody. Like I don't think there's any chance that they wouldn't bring her because
I'm
she's
just
the star of the
saying,
show.
you
That'd
can
be
do
weird.
some wild things.
You can do anthology stuff for
Yeah.
sure. And I just don't think that that's what this show is. Like,
No, and she's too good. You can't.
this is also a show that actors probably really enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
Because it's like designed for an actor's playground. So why the fuck would they not want to come back?
Honestly, like thinking of like I'm not attracted to the idea of being on set and like all that stress of production. But the idea of doing something like this in a black box theater with like basically just the actors and a few like basic props, like gonna put in a chair, set a table here and just call it a day and go for the scene. That sounds really cool to me. It sounds really cool to be able to work with actors that closely and get to just focus on the emotions so much. I feel like, I'm not going to say that was an unintended benefit, but they could have completely planned that the whole time. But it definitely seems like a benefit that I hadn't considered when I was thinking about the process of rotoscoping everything. Just the intimacy that would create.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, do we want to announce what we have next week?
Yeah. So next week, John is coming back to have another shitty chat with us. I don't know why I said it like that. He's chatting with us, and we have chosen the broad topic of breaking into the screenwriting industry because it's something that everyone seems to have a lot of questions about and enjoy, and John has many a story. But as always, he wants it to be open. And so if you have a question about story or about anything, come here and we'll pull it up on the screen and go for it. But what we're going to start with is John just talking about breaking into the industry and what that means in terms of like contests and getting representation. And John's going to probably say you need to write one great script and all these other things. But yeah, he'll just talk about his time and how he's probably more about how he's gotten some of his students' stuff sold and like talk a little bit more about that process. So hopefully pulling the curtain back a bit. But yeah.
I think everybody misses John and they're sick of us. So let's bring the old blood back in.
Bring the old guy back. You know, here's a fun fact of the day. When me and John were in his office talking about what to call young screenwriters, he said, "What about bald guy screenwriting?" And then I'm like, "The mascot." I said, "John."
See, everybody has bad ideas. Everybody has bad ideas.
He was
Bald
really
guy
on this
screenwriting.
idea, though.
This used to be bald guy screenwriting. And here's the thing, I have this beautiful mane of hair that I would have never been qualified.
You would have had to shave your head to join us.
I would have had to shave my head, yeah.
But yeah, he was really into that idea for a while. He's like, we can have someone like draw me. And then that's how come we got the drawing of him originally. You know how we have that beautiful drawing of John that's like red and blue? That was one of his first attempts at being our mascot. And I was just like, John, no one's going to know what that means.
On that note, let's say goodbye and see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. We hope that you finish this season and then come chat about it with us in the Discord. And again, I'll post that animation link for anybody who wants to check it out. Right. Bye, everybody.